My life changed the day I said yes to my fiancé Nathan. I'm Veronique, 29 years old, and looking at this beautiful engagement ring still feels surreal sometimes, especially considering that 7 years ago my own mother chose my toxic stepsister Amber over me and kicked me out of our home. Now, by some cosmic joke, Nathan's company just fired Amber's husband Jake. And guess what? She's convinced I planned it all for revenge. If you're watching this right now, let me know where you're viewing from and hit subscribe to hear my story of betrayal and unexpected justice. Growing up in the small coastal town of Marblehead, Massachusetts, it was just my mum Linda and me against the world. My father died in a boating accident when I was 5 years old, leaving mum to raise me alone. Despite the circumstances, my early childhood was filled with love and precious moments that I still cherish. Every weekend, mum would take me to the beach regardless of the season. In summer, we'd collect seashells and build sandcastles. During winter, bundled in our warmest coats, we'd watch the stormy waves crash against the rocks. Those moments by the ocean became our special ritual, a place where we could feel close to Dad. The sea connects us to everyone we've lost, Mum would say as we stood on the shore. The same water touching our toes once touched your father too. Our small 2-bedroom house never felt lacking, despite Mum working 2 jobs to keep us afloat. She waitressed at a local diner during the day and did bookkeeping for small businesses in the evenings. No matter how exhausted she was, she maintained our Sunday morning tradition of homemade blueberry pancakes and board games. I can still smell the sweet aroma filling our kitchen and hear her laughter when I would inevitably beat her at Monopoly. "You're going to be a business tycoon someday," she'd joke as I collected her play money. Throughout elementary and middle school, I excelled academically and discovered my talent for art. My watercolor paintings of our coastal town even won regional competitions. Mum never missed a single art show or honor roll ceremony, always sitting in the front row with tears of pride in her eyes. "Your creativity comes from your father," she would tell me. "He could look at ordinary things and see magic in them, just like you do." My maternal grandparents Eleanor and William played a significant role in our lives. They lived just a short bus ride away in Salem and would often have us over for Friday night dinners. Grandpa William taught me chess and astronomy, while Grandma Eleanor shared her passion for baking and gardening. Their home was my second sanctuary, filled with books, the scent of freshly baked cookies, and unconditional love. During those years, Mum dated occasionally, but nothing serious ever developed. She was careful to introduce me to her dates only after several outings and always made it clear that we were a package deal. Her relationships typically fizzled out after a few months, which secretly relieved me. Our mother-daughter dynamic worked perfectly, and I feared anyone disrupting it. "No man is worth sacrificing what we have," Mum assured me after another relationship ended. "You'll always be my priority, Veronique." Everything changed when I turned 15. My grandparents were driving home from their anniversary dinner when a drunk driver ran a red light and crashed into their car. They both died at the scene. The loss devastated us. Mum and I clung to each other through the funeral arrangements, the grieving process, and the overwhelming task of clearing out their home. I noticed subtle changes in Mum in the months following their deaths. Her smile appeared less frequently, and when it did, it rarely reached her eyes. She started calling in sick to work, something she'd never done before. Some mornings I'd find her still in her bathrobe at noon, staring out the window with a vacant expression. As the only family she had left, I felt responsible for her happiness. I took on more household chores, learnt to cook her favourite meals, and even suggested we adopt a cat for company. I thought we would heal together as we always had before. "Maybe we should join a grief support group," I suggested one evening after finding her crying over old photo albums. She nodded absently, and the following week she attended her first meeting at the community centre. Something shifted in her after that first session. She came home with a bit more colour in her cheeks and mentioned meeting people who truly understood what she was going through. I was relieved to see this small improvement and encouraged her to keep attending. After her 4th meeting, Mum mentioned a man named Robert, who had lost his wife to cancer 3 years prior. She spoke about him with an animation I hadn't seen since before my grandparents' accident. "Robert has a daughter your age," she mentioned casually over dinner. "Her name is Amber. Wouldn't it be nice for you to have someone to talk to who understands what it's like to lose a parent?" I nodded enthusiastically, genuinely happy to see Mum interested in something again. If Robert was the reason for her renewed energy, I was all for it. Besides, the idea of meeting someone who shared the experience of growing up without a parent intrigued me. Little did I know that this would be the beginning of the end of life as I knew it. 2 weeks later, Mum invited Robert and Amber for dinner. I spent the entire day helping her clean the house and prepare lasagna, my specialty. I remember feeling nervous, but hopeful as I set the table with Grandma Eleanor's good china. "They're just people who understand what we've been through," Mum reassured me, noticing my anxiety. "No pressure, no expectations." When the doorbell rang at 6 o'clock sharp, I smoothed my dress and followed Mom to greet our guests. Robert was tall with salt and pepper hair and a warm smile that seemed to brighten Mum's face instantly. Standing slightly behind him was Amber, a slender girl with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that didn't quite reach her green eyes. Little did I know that this dinner would set in motion events that would eventually tear my life apart. The dinner that first night seemed to go well on the surface. Robert complimented my lasagna repeatedly, and Mum laughed more than I'd heard in months. Amber was quiet but polite, offering short answers to my attempts at conversation. I noticed how she watched her father interact with my mother, her smile tightening whenever they shared a private joke or touched hands across the table. "Your house is so quaint," Amber commented while helping me clear the dishes. The slight pause before quaint, and her tone made it clear it wasn't a compliment, but I brushed it off as awkwardness. "Thanks. We've lived here since I was born," I replied, trying to keep things friendly. "What's your place like?" "Dad bought a new house after Mum died. He said we needed a fresh start without memories. It's in Swampscott on the water. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and a pool." Her words carried an unmistakable note of superiority. Over the next few weeks, Robert and Amber became fixtures in our lives. Robert would bring flowers for Mum and small gifts for me, usually books about art since Mum had mentioned my interest. Amber always came along, never bringing anything except her practiced smile and watchful eyes. During these initial meetings, Amber was careful to present herself as sweet and thoughtful when adults were present. She would offer to help Mum in the kitchen or compliment my artwork on the walls. But when we were alone, a different Amber emerged. "Must be hard for you seeing your mum so into my dad," she said once, while we were supposed to be picking a movie to watch. "She's different with him than with you, more alive." Her words stung because there was some truth to them. Mum did seem more animated with Robert than she had been with me lately. I tried to remind myself that this was a good thing, that Mum deserving happiness didn't mean she loved me less. Just 3 months after that first dinner, Robert proposed to Mum during a beach picnic, where Amber and I were conspicuously present. I forced a smile as Mum tearfully accepted, trying to ignore the triumphant gleam in Amber's eyes. Everything moved at whirlwind speed after that. Within weeks, Robert and Amber had moved into our small house, supposedly temporarily, while they looked for a larger place for all of us. The space that had once felt cozy for 2 now felt suffocatingly cramped with 4. I gave up my bedroom to Robert and moved into the small guest room that had previously stored my art supplies. My canvases and paints were relegated to the garage, where the temperature fluctuations ruined some of my works in progress. When I mentioned this to Mum, she seemed distracted. "It's just temporary, honey. Soon we'll have a bigger place with a proper studio space for you." The first clear sign of trouble came when I noticed my grandmother's silver bracelet was missing from my jewelry box. I'd been given it after her death and rarely wore it, preferring to keep it safe. After searching my room frantically, I mentioned it to Mum. "Are you sure you didn't misplace it?" she asked, folding laundry that now included Robert's button-down shirts and Amber's designer jeans. "I always keep it in the same place," I insisted. "Could someone have moved it when we rearranged the rooms?" Later that day, I walked past Amber's room and glimpsed something silver glinting on her dresser. The door was ajar, and when I looked closer, I recognized my grandmother's bracelet among Amber's jewelry. When I confronted her privately, she blinked innocently. "Oh, your mum said I could borrow it. Is that a problem?" I knew Mum would never lend out Grandma's bracelet without telling me. When I approached Mum about it, Amber was right beside her, eyes wide and concerned. "I thought you said it was okay when we were discussing jewelry last week," Amber said to Mum. "I would never take something without permission." Mum looked confused but then nodded slowly. "We did talk about family heirlooms. I might have said something about sharing." "I never heard that conversation," I protested, feeling increasingly frustrated. "Well, you've been so busy with school lately," Mum replied, a slight edge to her voice that I'd never heard directed at me before. This pattern repeated with alarming frequency. Items would go missing, tensions would rise, and somehow I would end up looking unreasonable or forgetful. The wedding was a small affair at a local restaurant, nothing like the celebration Mum had once described dreaming of. Amber served as bridesmaid while I was maid of honor, both of us in navy blue dresses that Amber had helped Mom select. During her toast, Amber gave a performance worthy of an Oscar. "I lost my mom and Veronique lost her dad, but today we've become a real family," she said, voice quavering perfectly as she raised her sparkling cider. Her eyes locked with mine as she added, "I've always wanted a sister." The look we shared contained no sisterly affection, only a clear message that she had won some unspoken competition. Throughout the reception, she stayed glued to Robert's side, whispering in his ear, and laughing occasionally, casting glances my way to ensure I noticed their closeness. After the wedding, our home dynamic shifted dramatically. Robert took over the family finances, insisting that Mum didn't need to work 2 jobs anymore. She reduced her hours at the diner, but seemed to have less spending money than before. Meanwhile, Amber regularly returned home with shopping bags from expensive stores. "Dad says I deserve nice things after everything I've been through," she explained when I commented on her 3rd new pair of shoes that month. Robert began renovating parts of our house without much consultation, replacing furniture that held sentimental value with modern pieces that Amber had picked out. My father's old reading chair disappeared one day, replaced by a sleek leather recliner. "Where's Dad's chair?" I asked Mum when I came home from school. Robert thought it was time for an update. "The leather is more practical," she replied, not meeting my eyes. "But that was Dad's chair. We were supposed to keep it. Veronique, we need to make room for Robert and Amber in our lives. That means letting go of some old things." The final straw came on my 17th birthday. Mom had always made my birthdays special with my favourite chocolate raspberry cake and a day devoted to whatever activities I chose. That year, I awoke to find Mum and Robert preparing to leave the house. "Amber's having some issues with a project for school," Mum explained hurriedly. "We need to go pick up supplies and help her finish it. We'll celebrate your birthday tonight, okay?" They returned 8 hours later with a clearly unbothered Amber, who was wearing new clothes and carrying a shopping bag from an electronics store. My emergency birthday dinner was takeout pizza, and my cake was store-bought. Mum seemed genuinely sorry, but kept glancing anxiously at Amber as if seeking her approval for even this minimal celebration. Later that week, I was looking for my sketch pad when I noticed my mother's jewelry box was open in her room. Curious about what else might have disappeared, I looked inside and found it nearly empty. The pearl necklace from my father, her engagement ring from him, and several other sentimental pieces were gone. Concerned, I searched the house and eventually found several items in Amber's dresser drawer, partially hidden under her sweaters. This time I was furious. These weren't just any jewelry, but precious connections to my father and our past. I confronted Amber directly in her room. "Why do you have Mum's jewelry?" "The pearls were from my father." She smiled, not even attempting to look innocent this time. "Robert says family heirlooms should stay in the family. Since I'm his daughter and now Linda's stepdaughter, these belong to me too." "That's not how it works. These are Mum's personal items from her life before you." "Well, her life before us doesn't matter anymore. She has a new family now," Amber replied coldly. "Besides, it's not like she wears them. They were just sitting in a box." Our argument escalated until Robert and Mum returned home. Hearing the commotion, they rushed upstairs to find me holding the pearl necklace and Amber in tears. "She came into my room and started going through my things," Amber sobbed. When I asked her to stop, she grabbed Mum's necklace and accused me of stealing it. "That's not what happened," I protested. "I found Mum's missing jewelry hidden in her drawer. I wasn't hiding anything," Amber countered, tears flowing perfectly. "Mum said I could look through her jewelry any time. I was just borrowing some pieces." Mum looked between us, clearly torn. "I did tell her she could look at my jewelry," she admitted reluctantly. "But not take it," I insisted. "Not Dad's gifts to you." "Veronique, enough," Robert interrupted firmly. "You're upsetting everyone." Amber obviously had permission. If you'd asked instead of accusing, we could have avoided this scene. I looked to Mum, waiting for her to correct him, to stand up for me and the memories of my father. Instead, she sighed deeply. "Let's all calm down. Amber, please return my pearl necklace." "Veronique, we don't invade other people's privacy in this house." In that moment, I realized with devastating clarity that Mom was slipping away from me, choosing peace with Robert and Amber over the truth and over me. The tension at home became unbearable after the jewelry incident. I threw myself into my schoolwork, finding solace in academic success, where home no longer provided it. My senior year brought good news when I earned a prestigious partial scholarship to Massachusetts State University. While it wouldn't cover all expenses, it was a significant achievement that I hoped would make Mum proud. When I announced the scholarship at dinner, Robert offered a perfunctory "congratulations" before immediately turning the conversation to Amber's drama club performance. Mum smiled weakly at me across the table, but didn't elaborate or ask questions about my accomplishment. Later that evening, I overheard Robert and Mum discussing finances in their bedroom. "I don't see why we need to contribute much to her college fund when she has that scholarship," Robert was saying. "Amber will be applying to schools next year and she doesn't have the same academic advantages." "Veronique has worked very hard," Mum replied, her voice lacking the conviction it once would have held. "We always planned for her college." "Plans change when families merge," Robert said firmly. "We need to be fair to both girls. Besides, Veronique is independent. She can work part-time like you did." The next day, I applied for a job at the local bookstore, working evenings and weekends to save for college expenses. Meanwhile, Amber began dropping hints about wanting a car for her upcoming birthday. "Dad always said I could have a car when I turned 17, she mentioned casually at breakfast. "Something cute and red, maybe a Mustang convertible." 3 weeks later, Robert surprised her with a brand new Volkswagen Beetle in bright yellow, complete with custom seat covers and a premium sound system. That same week, Mum informed me that they'd need to reallocate some of my college fund for family expenses. As graduation approached, I was named valedictorian of my class. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 o'clock on a Saturday in June. Mum and Robert confirmed they would attend, and even Amber grudgingly agreed to come. The morning of graduation, I was reviewing my speech when Amber burst into my room without knocking. "Mum and Dad need to take me to the emergency room," she announced, a strange gleam in her eyes despite her worried expression. "I'm having another panic attack and my therapist says it could be serious this time." "Today, right now?" I asked incredulously. "My graduation starts in 3 hours." She shrugged, already turning to leave. "Medical emergencies don't follow your schedule, Veronique. Not everything is about you." From downstairs, I heard Mum calling my name. I rushed down to find her gathering her purse and keys, looking flustered. "Veronique, I'm so sorry. Amber's having another episode. We need to take her to the hospital." "Mom, it's my graduation. I'm giving the valedictorian speech." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Can Robert take her while you come to the ceremony?" Mum glanced toward Robert, who was helping a dramatically trembling Amber into her coat. "We need to go as a family." Her therapist said having supportive family present is crucial during these episodes. "But I'm family too," I whispered, fighting back tears. Mum hugged me quickly. "We'll try to make it back in time, I promise. If not, we'll celebrate tonight." They left me standing alone in our living room, still in my bathrobe, my graduation cap and gown hanging on the closet door. I called Mrs. Williams, my art teacher, who had become a mentor, and she kindly offered to come early to help me prepare and ensure someone was there for me. I delivered my speech to the cheering crowd, with Mrs. Williams beaming proudly from the audience. Mum's seat remained empty throughout the 2-hour ceremony. When I checked my phone afterward, there were no messages or calls. They returned home after 7 that evening. Amber appeared completely recovered, chatting animatedly about a cute doctor she'd met. There was no sign they had rushed back or made any attempt to catch even the end of my graduation. "How did it go, honey?" Mum asked, as if she'd merely missed a routine school event rather than one of the most important days of my life. "Fine," I replied flatly, too hurt to elaborate. "We're really sorry we missed it," Robert added without looking up from his phone. "But Amber's health has to come first. You understand." I didn't understand, not really. Especially when I later overheard Amber on the phone with a friend, laughing about how easy it was to fake symptoms when you know all the right things to say to doctors. That summer, I discovered the true extent of Robert's financial manipulation. While sorting through mail one day, I came across a bank statement for an account I didn't recognize. It showed regular transfers from what I knew to be our family savings into this separate account. When I carefully questioned Mum about it, she became defensive. "Robert manages our finances now. It's easier that way with our blended family." "But that money was partly from selling Grandma and Grandpa's house," I pointed out. "It was supposed to be for emergencies and my education." "Veronique, Robert knows what he's doing. We have expenses you don't understand. Amber's therapy isn't cheap and we're saving for both of you girls." "Then why is Amber getting a car and new clothes while my college fund is being reallocated?" Mum's face hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "You're being selfish. Amber has emotional needs that require special attention. You've always been the strong one." That night, I cried myself to sleep, mourning not just the loss of financial support, but the mother who once would have fiercely protected my interests. The woman who defended Robert's financial decisions was a stranger wearing my mother's face. As the summer progressed, I worked double shifts at the bookstore and began selling custom artwork online to build my savings. Home became merely a place to sleep between work and preparation for college. I avoided family dinners when possible, unable to bear watching the dynamic between Robert Amber and my increasingly unrecognizable mother. The painful realization that I was losing my mother to this toxic family dynamic kept me awake night after night. The woman who had once been my fierce protector and closest confidant now viewed me through a lens crafted by Robert and Amber. In her eyes, I had somehow transformed from beloved daughter to selfish outsider, all within the span of 2 years. The final confrontation happened 2 weeks before I was set to leave for college. Amber had been dating Jake Harrison for about a month, bringing him to the house frequently. Jake worked as a junior analyst at Henderson Financial, a prestigious firm in Boston, and Robert clearly approved of the relationship, often engaging Jake in long conversations about investment strategies. From the first time I met him, something about Jake made me uncomfortable. He was conventionally attractive with perfectly styled dark hair and an expensive watch. He made sure everyone noticed, but there was a coldness in his eyes when he thought no one was looking. More concerning was how he looked at me when Amber and the parents weren't paying attention, his gaze lingering inappropriately. I tried to avoid being alone with him, making excuses to stay at work later or go to my room when he visited. One evening, Amber cornered me in the kitchen. "Jake thinks you're rude," she said, leaning against the counter as I washed dishes. "He's trying to be nice to you as my future sister-in-law." I nearly dropped the plate I was washing. "Sister-in-law, you've been dating for a month." She twisted her hair around her finger, smirking. "Dad really likes him. Jake's already talking about our future together. He comes from a good family, unlike some people in this house." "Kosei," I ignored the jab. "Well, congrats. But maybe tell your boyfriend to stop staring at me like I'm dessert." Her eyes narrowed. "You're delusional. And jealous, obviously. Jake would never look at you when he has me." I dried my hands and tried to leave, but she blocked my path. "Stay away from Jake. I've seen how you try to get his attention." The accusation was so absurd, I actually laughed. "Trust me, Amber, I want nothing to do with him. Now excuse me." The fateful day came when I was scheduled to work until 9, but got sent home early because the bookstore was unusually quiet. No one expected me home before 10, as I usually went to the library after work to use their internet for college preparation, since Robert had changed our home Wi-Fi password to limit data usage. I entered quietly through the back door, hearing the TV from the living room where I assumed Mum and Robert were watching their evening shows. Amber's car wasn't in the driveway, so I thought I'd have some rare peace in my room to organize my college packing. As I climbed the stairs, I noticed my bedroom door was slightly open with light spilling into the hallway. I always closed it completely when leaving. My heart began to race as I approached cautiously. Pushing the door wider, I froze in shock. Jake was there, rifling through my desk drawer where I kept my personal journal and the small amount of cash I'd saved from tips. He hadn't heard me over the sound of papers shuffling. "What are you doing in my room?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. He spun around, momentarily startled, before his expression shifted to a smooth smile. "Veronique, you're home early. Amber asked me to grab her charger. She said she might have left it in here." "Amber has never been in my room, and you know it," I replied, staying in the doorway. "Get out, now." Instead of leaving, he closed the drawer and took a step toward me. "Don't be like that. We're practically family now." "We're not family. Get out of my room." I stood my ground despite my racing heart. He moved closer, his smile turning predatory. "You know Amber says you're jealous of her, that you've always wanted what she has." Another step. "Is that true, Veronique? Do you want what Amber has?" I backed into the hallway. "I'm going to call for Robert if you don't leave right now." Jake lunged forward suddenly, grabbing my wrist and pulling me into the room. "Robert and your mom left to pick up dinner. Amber's meeting them there." His grip tightened painfully. "It's just you and me." Fear shot through me, but it quickly transformed into rage. I was done being a victim in my own home. I twisted my arm sharply the way my self-defense class had taught me, and simultaneously brought my knee up hard. Jake doubled over, cursing loudly. I shoved him away from me with all my strength, causing him to stumble backward against my desk, knocking items to the floor with a crash. "Get out!" I shouted, positioning myself near the door for escape if needed. That's when Amber appeared in the doorway behind me, her timing so perfect it seemed staged. "What's going on?" she demanded, taking in the scene with calculating eyes. Before I could explain, Jake straightened up, his face contorted with pain and anger. "She came onto me, Amber. I came up to get your charger like you asked, and she tried to kiss me. When I refused, she attacked me." "What?" "That's a complete lie," I protested, looking from Jake to Amber in disbelief. Amber's face transformed into a mask of betrayal and fury so convincing it was chilling. "I heard you, Veronique. I heard you telling him how much better you are for him than me." "That never happened. He was in my room going through my things when I got home." Amber's voice rose to a shriek. "Stop lying. You've always been jealous of me, always wanted to take everything from me." Her shouting brought the sound of the front door opening and hurried footsteps on the stairs. Robert appeared first with Mum right behind him, both carrying takeout bags that were quickly abandoned. "What's going on?" Robert demanded, looking between the three of us. Amber burst into tears, running to her father's arms. "Veronique tried to seduce Jake. I caught them in her room." "That's not true." I turned desperately to Mom, whose face had gone pale. "Mom, he was in my room going through my things. When I confronted him, he grabbed me. I defended myself." Jake, composing himself, stepped forward with practiced sincerity. "Sir, I'm very uncomfortable about this whole situation. I came up to get Amber's charger, and Veronique misinterpreted my presence. She made advances that I rejected, and she became violent." "He's lying." I felt like I was shouting into a void. "Mom, you know I would never do that." Robert's face hardened as he held a sobbing Amber. "I've seen how you look at Jake, Veronique. The jealousy has been obvious." "What?" I gasped, unable to believe what I was hearing. Mum finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Veronique, how could you do this to your sister?" The word sister cut through me like a knife. After everything Amber had done, Mum was still taking her side. "She is not my sister," I said quietly. "And I didn't do anything wrong. He was in my room going through my things." "Liar," Amber wailed dramatically. "You've always hated me, always tried to keep Mom from being happy with Dad." Robert's expression grew thunderous. "I've had enough of this. Veronique, I've tried to be patient with your attitude, but this crosses a line. You've brought nothing but tension into this family since Amber and I moved in." "That's not fair," I protested, though my voice was beginning to break. "Mum, please." But Mum wouldn't meet my eyes. She stood slightly behind Robert, her shoulders hunched, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Robert pointed toward my room. "Pack what you need for tonight. I want you out of this house." "What?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "You heard me. You're 18 next month anyway. College starts soon. Consider this an early start at independence." I looked desperately at Mom, waiting for her to defend me, to say this was still her house too, and Robert couldn't make this decision. But she remained silent, eyes downcast. "Mom," I pleaded one last time. She finally looked up, her eyes shimmering with tears. "Maybe it's for the best, Veronique. Just for a while until things cool down." In that moment, something broke inside me. My own mother, the woman who had once promised I would always be her priority, was choosing peace with Robert and Amber over me. She was throwing me out of my childhood home based on a lie. With shaking hands and tears streaming down my face, I packed a duffel bag with essentials. The whole time I kept expecting Mum to come into my room to tell me it was all a mistake, that she knew I was telling the truth. She never came. As I carried my bag downstairs, Amber stood watching from the landing. No sign of tears now, only a small victorious smile playing on her lips. Robert waited impatiently by the front door. Mum stood in the living room, arms wrapped around herself, still not meeting my eyes. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked, my voice hollow. "That's not our problem," Robert replied coldly. "You should have thought of the consequences before your actions." I turned to Mum one last time. "Are you really going to let this happen?" She looked up briefly, then away again. "Call me when you're settled somewhere. We can talk then." With those inadequate words hanging in the air, I walked out of my childhood home, the door closing firmly behind me. Standing on the porch with one bag and nowhere to go, I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and called the only person I could think of, Mrs. Williams, my art teacher. That night, sleeping on Mrs. Williams's guest bed, I realized a chapter of my life had ended. My mother had made her choice, and it wasn't me. Mrs. Williams's kindness saved me during those first difficult weeks. She insisted I stay with her until college started refusing any payment, despite my offers to help with chores and expenses. "You're not the first student I've had in this situation," she told me over tea the morning after I arrived. "Family can be the source of our deepest wounds. What matters now is how you move forward." I tried calling Mum several times during that first week. She answered once, her voice strained and distant. When I asked if I could come get more of my belongings, she suggested I wait until Robert and Amber were out of the house, to avoid confrontation. We scheduled a time, but when I arrived, I found the locks had been changed. My text went unanswered after that. With Mrs. Williams's help, I connected with student services at Massachusetts State University and explained my situation. They were surprisingly understanding, helping me secure emergency housing to move in early and connecting me with resources for students without family support. "You're not alone in this," the kindly housing coordinator assured me. "We have protocols in place for students in your situation." The partial scholarship covered my tuition, but living expenses remained a challenge. I took on a work-study position in the university library and a weekend job at a local cafe. Between the two, I could just afford my meal plan and basic necessities with little left over for anything else. My roommate Zoe turned out to be an unexpected blessing. A sociology major with vibrant purple hair and a contagious laugh, she noticed my minimal belongings on move-in day and immediately took me under her wing. "College is when we create our chosen family," she declared, helping me set up my side of the room with posters she insisted on buying. "Blood relatives are just the starter pack. Some are keepers, others you outgrow." Zoe's warmth and straightforward perspective helped me navigate the complex emotions of being essentially orphaned at 18. On nights when I couldn't sleep, replaying the final confrontation in my mind and wondering what I could have done differently, she would make herbal tea and listen without judgment. "Your mum's making her choices," she would say. "They're bad choices, but they're hers to make. You're making your choices too, and from where I'm sitting, you're crushing it." The first semester passed in a blur of classes, work shifts, and adjusting to my new reality. I excelled academically, finding purpose in my business studies with a marketing emphasis. My professors noticed my dedication, and one recommended me for a competitive sophomore internship, despite my freshman status. Around Thanksgiving, I received a wedding invitation in the mail addressed simply to Linda's daughter. The lavender envelope contained a formal announcement of Amber and Jake's engagement with a wedding date set for the following June, just after my freshman year would end. The invitation felt like a deliberate power move, a reminder that Amber had won. She had my mother Robert's approval, and now a wedding that I suspected would be funded by my depleted college fund. The casual Linda's daughter, rather than my name, confirmed I was an afterthought, invited only as a formality. That night, I broke down in our dorm room, clutching the invitation as I sobbed. Zoe held me through it, then ceremoniously helped me rip the invitation into tiny pieces that we flushed down the toilet. "That's what we think of toxic people's power plays," she announced as we watched the paper fragments swirl away. The next day, I wrote one final letter to Mum. I poured everything into those pages, my hurt at her betrayal, the truth about what happened with Jake, my grief over losing her, and finally my decision to decline the wedding invitation. I explained that I would always love her, but I couldn't be part of a family that had treated me with such cruelty and disregard. "I hope someday you remember who you were before Robert and Amber," I wrote in closing. "That woman was the best mother anyone could ask for. I miss her every day." 2 weeks later, the letter returned in my campus mailbox, unopened with "Return to sender," written across it in handwriting I recognized as Amber's. The message was clear: I no longer had access to my mother. The realization hurt like a physical wound, but it also provided a strange clarity. The uncertainty was gone. I knew where I stood. During winter break, when the dorms closed, Zoe insisted I come home with her to Chicago. Her parents welcomed me warmly, setting up a comfortable guest room and including me in all their holiday traditions. "Any friend of Zoe's is family here," her mother declared, handing me a stocking with my name embroidered on it. That Christmas, surrounded by the Wong family's genuine warmth, I experienced both profound gratitude and sharp grief. This was what family should feel like, and it highlighted everything I had lost. When spring semester started, I threw myself even more intensely into my studies and work. My business professors were impressed by my dedication, and I secured that sophomore internship at a local marketing agency. The additional income allowed me to start building a small emergency fund, crucial for someone without family financial support. Throughout that year, I occasionally checked my mother's social media, torturing myself with glimpses of her new life. There were photos of Amber's engagement party, shopping trips for wedding dresses, and family dinners where Mum smiled thinly beside Robert. She looked older, with new lines around her eyes and mouth, her posture slightly stooped as if carrying an invisible weight. In April, just before finals, I made one last attempt to reach out. I called from a campus phone, thinking she might answer a number she didn't recognize. She did. Hello. Her voice was instantly familiar, sending a wave of longing through me. Mom, it's me, I said, my heart pounding. There was a long pause. Veronique, how are you? The polite formality in her tone hurt more than silence would have. I'm okay, finishing my freshman year. My voice caught. I've missed you. Another pause. I've missed you too. Her voice softened momentarily before hardening again. But things are complicated right now with the wedding preparations. Amber needs me focused on her special day. Mum, about what happened with Jake. I don't want to revisit that, Veronique, she interrupted sharply. What's done is done. But it wasn't true. He was... Please. She cut me off again. Robert and I have discussed this extensively with Amber and Jake. They're getting married. We need to move forward as a family. A family that doesn't include me, I said quietly. Her silence was answer enough. I won't be attending the wedding, I told her. I wish you all the best, but I can't pretend to support a marriage based on lies. That's your choice, she replied stiffly. I have to go now. Amber needs help with the floral arrangements. After we hung up, I sat on my bed for a long time, letting the finality of the situation sink in. My mother was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. The mourning process began anew, but this time with a sense of acceptance. I couldn't change her choices, only my response to them. I didn't attempt to contact her again after that call. I didn't attend the wedding. Instead, the day Amber married Jake, I was interviewing for and securing a summer internship position that would eventually change the trajectory of my career. Sophomore year arrived with a newfound sense of purpose. I changed my phone number, deleted my social media accounts, and focused entirely on building my future. The final emotional tie was severed when Zoe's parents casually mentioned during Thanksgiving that I was welcome to change my emergency contact information to list them. We're your Chicago family now, Zoe's dad said simply. That's what family does. They show up. By graduation, I had fully transformed my identity. I was no longer the abandoned daughter, but a rising star in marketing with multiple job offers. I graduated with honors, Zoe and her parents cheering loudly from the audience. The empty seats where my mother should have been no longer felt like gaping wounds, but merely facts of my history. When a prestigious marketing agency in Chicago offered me a position with growth potential, I accepted without hesitation. The city that had given me a second chance at family through the Wongs would now be my home. The final decision to cut contact came after learning from a mutual acquaintance that my mother had changed her phone number without informing me. The message couldn't have been clearer. I packed away the few mementos I had salvaged from my childhood home and focused entirely on my future in Chicago. At 22, I moved into my first tiny studio apartment, the space entirely my own. As I hung artwork on the walls and arranged furniture according to my taste, I realized I was creating something my mother and Amber could never take away, my own home, built on my own terms. Chicago embraced me with its vibrant energy and endless opportunities. The marketing agency where I started as a junior account manager recognized my drive and creativity, promoting me twice in my first 3 years. By 27, I was handling major accounts and mentoring new hires. My tiny studio gave way to a one-bedroom apartment with large windows overlooking a tree-lined street in Lakeview. I filled it with second-hand furniture. I restored my self-art from local creators and plants that thrived under my care. Every element reflected my taste and journey, creating a sanctuary that was completely my own. Therapy became an essential part of my healing process. Weekly sessions with Dr. Levine helped me process the abandonment and betrayal, untangling the complex emotions that still occasionally ambushed me in quiet moments. Family rejection creates a unique kind of grief, she explained during one particularly difficult session. It's complicated by the fact that the person is still alive, but choosing not to be in your life. Gradually, I learned to accept that my mother had made her choice, and while I could grieve what was lost, I couldn't change her decision. More importantly, her rejection was a reflection of her weaknesses, not my worth. My social circle expanded beyond Zoe and her family, though they remained my core support system. I joined a book club, took pottery classes, and volunteered mentoring teen girls from challenging family situations. Each connection reinforced that family could be chosen built on mutual respect rather than obligation or biology. Dating proved more challenging. Early relationships faltered when the inevitable "tell me about your family" conversations arose. I either shared too little, creating an impression of secretiveness, or too much, overwhelming potential partners with my complicated history. Eventually, I developed a middle path, acknowledging the estrangement without making it the centerpiece of my identity. My mother and I are estranged. I would say simply, it was her choice, and while it's been painful, it's led me to create my own definition of family. This approach filtered out people who couldn't handle complexity while allowing space for deeper conversations as relationships developed. My career continued to flourish. At 28, I was promoted to senior account manager, handling our agency's relationship with Nexus Technologies, a rapidly growing financial technology company. The account required strategic thinking and innovative approaches, challenging me in ways that fueled my professional growth. It was during a charity gala for foster youth that I met Nathan. Our agency had donated marketing services to the organization, and I attended as our representative. Nathan was there representing Nexus Technologies, which had become a major donor. Tall with kind brown eyes and an easy smile, he approached me during the cocktail hour, commenting on my thoughtful questions during the presentation. Our conversation flowed effortlessly from the charity's mission to our respective companies, discovering we had been working adjacent to each other for months without meeting. "I've seen your name on marketing proposals, Gemaya," he admitted, looking slightly embarrassed. "I may have specifically requested your work after the first campaign you designed. Your understanding of our company values was remarkable." We exchanged business cards with personal numbers scribbled on the back, an old-fashioned gesture that somehow felt perfect. Our first date was coffee the following week, which stretched into lunch, and then an impromptu visit to an art installation nearby. From the beginning, Nathan was different. He listened intently when I spoke, asked insightful questions, and shared his own thoughts and experiences with refreshing honesty. As Executive Director of Strategic Partnerships at Nexus, he was ambitious and driven, but never at the expense of his values or relationships. "My parents taught me that success means nothing if you sacrifice your integrity to achieve it," he told me over dinner on our third date. They built their construction company from nothing, treating every employee like family. I try to bring that same ethic to corporate finance. When he spoke about his family, his face lit up with genuine affection. His parents had been married for 35 years, still held hands at movies, and had created a home where all three of their children felt unconditionally loved while being held to high standards. "Sunday dinners are mandatory unless you're out of state," he laughed. "Mom says it's her insurance policy against us forgetting where we came from." As we continued dating, I met his family gradually. First his sister Maria and her husband for double date night, then his brother James for a Cubs game. Finally, after 3 months, he invited me to the legendary Sunday dinner. I spent hours choosing the right outfit and selecting a gift for his parents, anxiety mounting as I imagined all the ways I might fail to fit into this close-knit family. The therapist's voice in my head reminded me that my fear of rejection stemmed from my mother's abandonment, not any actual evidence that Nathan's family wouldn't accept me. The moment Eleanor Parker opened her front door and enveloped me in a warm hug, my anxiety began to dissolve. Their modest but beautiful home in Oak Park was filled with family photos, children's artwork, framed like masterpieces, and the unmistakable scent of homemade bread. "Nathan talks about you constantly," his father Thomas confided, while showing me his woodworking shop in the garage. "It's good to see him this happy." Throughout that dinner, surrounded by sibling banter, inside jokes I didn't yet understand, and genuine interest in my life and career, I glimpsed what family could and should be. They asked questions about my work and listened to my answers. They included me in conversations about family memories by providing context and invited my opinions on current topics. As our relationship deepened over the next year, the question of my family background inevitably arose. I had shared minimal details with Nathan, explaining simply that I was estranged from my mother and had no contact with my stepfamily. He never pushed, accepting that I would share more when ready. That moment came on a quiet evening at my apartment after we had been dating for just over a year. Something about the gentle rain against the windows and the safety I felt in his presence unlocked the story I had kept carefully contained. I told him everything: the close relationship with Mom before Robert and Amber, the gradual erosion of our bond, the final betrayal, and being thrown out of my childhood home. Throughout my account, Nathan listened without interruption, his hand steady in mine, his eyes reflecting anger, compassion, and sorrow at the appropriate moments. When I finished emotionally drained but somehow lighter, he pulled me into an embrace so gentle yet firm that something long frozen inside me began to thaw. "Thank you for trusting me with your story," he said simply. "It helps me understand the incredible strength and resilience that make you who you are." No platitudes, no immediate solutions, just acknowledgement and respect for my experience. In that moment, I knew with certainty that I loved him. Our relationship continued to deepen. I met his extended family at holidays, gradual introducing into my life the traditions and connections I had lost. Nathan spent Thanksgiving with Zoe's family, seamlessly integrating into the chosen family that had sustained me through college. Christmas at the Parker household was a revelation of what the holiday could be. Chaotic but loving, filled with homemade decorations saved from childhood's gag gifts, alongside thoughtful presents and no undercurrent of tension or favoritism. Thomas and Eleanor treated me like another daughter, including a stocking with my name and gifts clearly selected with my preferences in mind. "You're family now," Eleanor told me privately as we washed dishes together. "Nathan brought you home, and that's that." By our second anniversary, Nathan and I were discussing our future together openly. We wanted the same things: marriage eventually, children, careers that mattered without consuming our lives. We had similar values about money, similar approaches to conflict resolution, and complementary strengths and weaknesses. During a weekend trip to a cabin in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, Nathan proposed on a windswept beach at sunset. The ring, a sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds, caught the last golden light as he held it toward me. "I want to build a life with you, Veronique," he said, voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "A family where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued. Will you marry me?" The yes that burst from my lips felt like the most natural response in the world. The initial joy of our engagement was soon complicated by practical considerations, including the question of whether to invite my mother to the wedding. Nathan supported whatever decision I made, but I struggled with conflicting emotions. The therapist helped me work through the options, eventually leading to my decision not to reach out. You can acknowledge that you might still love your mother while recognizing that having her at your wedding could reopen wounds and disrupt the joy of the day, Dr. Levine suggested. Boundaries aren't about punishment, but about protecting your well-being. As we began planning our wedding, I threw myself into creating new traditions with Nathan, designing a celebration that reflected our values and relationship, rather than conforming to expectations. His parents offered financial support without attempting to control any decisions, a stark contrast to the family dynamic I had grown up with. Life settled into a happy rhythm of work, wedding planning, and deepening connections with my chosen family. I had everything I had worked for: a fulfilling career, a loving partner, a supportive network, and a hard-won sense of peace about my past. Then came the phone call that upended everything. I was in a meeting with clients when my phone began vibrating repeatedly with calls from an unknown number. After the fifth call in 30 minutes, I excused myself to answer, concerned it might be an emergency. "Is this Veronique Lawson?" a woman's voice demanded without preamble. "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Amber Harrison. Remember me?" My blood ran cold at the sound of my stepsister's voice, unchanged despite the years. "Amber, what do you want? How did you get this number?" "That doesn't matter," she snapped. "What matters is what you've done. I know you're behind this and you're going to fix it." "Behind what? I have no idea what you're talking about." I struggled to keep my voice steady, grateful for the privacy of the empty conference room. "Don't play innocent. Jake was fired yesterday. After 7 years at Harrison Financial, suddenly there's a restructuring and his entire department is gone." Her voice dripped with accusation. "Then we find out the company was acquired by Nexus Technologies. Ring any bells? Your fiancé's company." The connection hit me like a physical blow. Nathan had mentioned his company acquiring a smaller financial firm recently, but I had paid little attention to the details focused on an upcoming campaign launch. "I had nothing to do with that," I replied honestly. "Nathan's company makes acquisitions all the time. I don't have any influence over their business decisions." "Bullshit," Amber hissed. 7 years we've been married, building our life, and suddenly Jake loses everything right after you get engaged to some executive. That's not a coincidence." "It absolutely is a coincidence," I insisted, my shock giving way to anger. "I haven't spoken to you or thought about you in years. I've been busy building my own life after being thrown out of my home based on your lies." "Still with the victim act," she scoffed. "Mum was right about you, always making everything about yourself." The mention of my mother sent a sharp pain through my chest. "How is Mum?" I asked before I could stop myself. "Devastated thanks to you. Jake was supporting all of us. Did you know that Robert's business failed 3 years ago? We've all been living on Jake's income, and now it's gone because of your vendetta." The news about Robert's business surprised me, but not as much as learning my mother had become financially dependent on Jake and Amber. It explained a lot about why she might have remained in such a toxic situation. "I'm sorry about Jake's job, but I had nothing to do with it," I repeated firmly. Nathan never even met Jake. "How would he know to target him specifically?" "Oh, please, like you haven't been feeding him stories about your abusive stepfamily for years. Don't think we don't know how you operate, turning people against us with your lies." I took a deep breath, centering myself the way my therapist had taught me. "Amber, I'm ending this call now. I had nothing to do with Jake's termination. I suggest he look at his own work performance for answers." "This isn't over," she threatened. "We know where you live, where you work. Mom saved the announcement from the Business Journal about your engagement. We'll make sure everyone knows what kind of manipulative person you really are." I ended the call, hands shaking. Within minutes, my email pinged with a message from an unfamiliar address. Opening it revealed a lengthy, rambling accusation from Robert, threatening legal action for tortious interference with Jake's employment. The email mentioned consulting attorneys and included veiled threats about revealing the truth about my character to Nathan and his family. That evening, I showed the email and explained the call to Nathan, anxiety churning in my stomach. What if he believed their accusations? What if this drama drove a wedge between us? Nathan read the email twice, his expression growing increasingly concerned, but not in the way I feared. "These are serious allegations with absolutely no basis in reality," he said, finally setting down his tablet. "More importantly, these threats border on harassment. We should talk to the legal team tomorrow." "You believe me?" "That I had nothing to do with this?" I asked, hating the vulnerability in my voice but needing the reassurance. His expression softened immediately. "Of course I believe you. But even more than that, I know for a fact you couldn't have influenced this decision, because the acquisition and restructuring have been in the works for over a year, long before we were even engaged." Relief flooded through me. I didn't even know Jake still worked there. I've tried to leave that part of my life behind completely. Nathan pulled me into a hug. "The timing is unfortunate but completely coincidental. However, I am concerned about these threats. This isn't normal behavior, Veronique." The next day, Nathan consulted with Nexus's legal department, who reviewed the email and confirmed that Jake Harrison had indeed been terminated, along with several colleagues, following an internal audit that identified compliance issues within their department. The audit found multiple instances of improper client account management, Nathan explained that evening. Jake wasn't singled out. The entire department had systemic issues that violated both company policy and potentially financial regulations. This information provided both vindication and concern. Jake's termination was completely justified and had nothing to do with me, but I worried that Amber and Robert wouldn't accept this reality. My worry proved well-founded when Amber launched what could only be described as a social media campaign against me. She created posts claiming I had orchestrated a vendetta against her family, tagging my company and Nathan's, attempting to draw attention to her accusations. Fortunately, her social media presence was limited and the posts gained little traction. Nathan's company released a standard statement about the acquisition and restructuring being based solely on business considerations and regulatory compliance, without mentioning specific employees. Just when I thought the situation couldn't become more complicated, I received a text from an unknown number. "It's Mom, we need to talk. Coffee tomorrow at 2 p.m, the Daily Grind on Michigan Ave. After 7 years of silence, after not even acknowledging my engagement announcement that I'd sent to her last known address, now she wanted to meet. The timing was suspicious, coming directly after Amber and Robert's accusations. I showed the text to Nathan, conflicted about how to respond. "You don't owe her a meeting," he reminded me gently, "but if you want closure, I can come with you or wait nearby." After consulting with Dr. Levine in an emergency session, I decided to meet her with Nathan, waiting at a separate table in the cafe. This would be on my terms after years of having no terms at all. When I arrived at the coffee shop the following afternoon, my heart nearly stopped at the sight of her. Linda Lawson Harrison sat alone at a corner table, looking much older than her 54 years. Her once vibrant auburn hair, so like mine, was dull and streaked with grey. Deep lines framed her mouth and eyes, and she hunched slightly as if carrying a physical burden. She didn't notice me immediately, giving me a moment to compose myself before approaching. Nathan squeezed my hand reassuringly before taking a seat near the entrance, close enough to intervene if needed, but giving us privacy. "Mom," I said, simply sliding into the chair across from her. She looked up, eyes widening slightly. "Veronique, you came." Her voice was raspier than I remembered, with an uncertain quality that seemed foreign to the confident mother of my childhood. "You said we needed to talk." I kept my voice neutral, fighting the conflicting urges to either embrace her or flee the cafe entirely. She nodded, fingers nervously adjusting her napkin. "You look well. Beautiful. I saw the engagement announcement in the business journal. Congratulations." "Thank you," I replied, not offering additional information. An awkward silence settled between us, stretching until she finally spoke again. "I imagine you know why I wanted to meet. About Jake losing his job." "I had nothing to do with that," I stated firmly. "It was a business decision based on compliance issues in his department. I didn't even know he worked for a company Nexus was acquiring." She studied my face for a moment. "I believe you." The simple statement caught me off guard. "You do. Jake has been reckless with finances for years. Robert and Amber refused to see it, but I've suspected something wasn't right." She sighed deeply. "It's why I wanted to meet you alone, without them. Where do they think you are now?" "Shopping. Robert and I are separating. After all these years, I'm finally seeing things clearly." She looked down at her untouched coffee. "Too late, I suppose." "Kate." My heart constricted at the defeated tone in her voice, but years of protective barriers didn't dissolve so easily. "Why now, after 7 years of silence?" She flinched slightly. "I deserve that. I've been a coward, Veronique. I convinced myself I was keeping peace, being a good wife and stepmother, but the truth is I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of being alone. Of Robert's anger. Of admitting I'd made horrible mistakes." Her voice cracked on the last word. "Especially with you." The admission hung between us, insufficient, yet more than I had ever expected to hear. "I should have believed you about Jake," she continued quietly. "I should have stood up for you. Instead, I let them push you out of your own home, out of my life." Tears filled my eyes despite my determination to remain composed. "Yes, you should have. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that not a day has gone by that I haven't regretted what happened. I've missed so much of your life." She hesitated. "I'd like to be at your wedding if you'll allow it, but I'll understand if the answer is no." The request struck me as simultaneously presumptuous and heartbreaking. A wedding invitation isn't the same as reconciliation, Mom. You can't disappear for 7 years and then expect to step back into my life for a special occasion. "I know." She nodded, wiping away a tear. "I was hoping it could be a beginning, not an ending. I've spent years in therapy dealing with the abandonment," I told her honestly. "I've built a life, created my own family of choice. I'm not that desperate girl you threw out anymore." "I see that," she replied, a hint of pride breaking through the sadness. "You've become an extraordinary woman, no thanks to me." We talked for nearly 2 hours, setting clear boundaries. Any relationship moving forward would require family therapy, complete honesty about the past, and her willingness to maintain appropriate boundaries with Robert and Amber. There would be no immediate return to mother-daughter closeness, but rather a careful rebuilding of basic trust. "I'd like to meet your fiancé," she said as our meeting neared its end. I glanced toward Nathan, who had been patiently reading on his tablet. He caught my eye and raised an eyebrow questioningly. "Today you can say hello briefly," I decided. Getting to know him comes later, after we've done some work rebuilding our relationship. When Nathan joined us, he was politely reserved, but not unkind. He didn't mention the accusations or threats, focusing instead on simple pleasantries, before excusing himself to give us a few more minutes alone. "He seems like a good man," Mum observed after he left. "He is. His family has shown me what healthy family dynamics look like. They've welcomed me without reservation." She nodded, understanding the implied comparison. "I'm glad you found that. You deserve better than what I gave you." As we prepared to leave, she hesitantly asked, "May I hug you?" The question brought fresh tears to my eyes. "Not yet," I answered honestly. "But maybe someday." 2 days later, I encountered Amber unexpectedly at a grocery store near my office. I was selecting produce when I heard her voice behind me. Well, the prodigal daughter herself." I turned slowly, maintaining my composure despite my racing heart. "Hello, Amber." She looked much the same, though her designer clothes seemed slightly less pristine than I remembered, her makeup a bit more heavy-handed. "Mom says you're playing innocent about Jake's job. She actually believes you." "It's the truth," I replied calmly. "If you're here to make a scene, I'm not interested." "You've always been so self-righteous," she hissed, stepping closer. Taking everything from us and then pretending to be the victim. Other shoppers were beginning to notice the confrontation. I kept my voice level. "I haven't taken anything from you, Amber. I built my own life after you and Robert took my home and my mother. Your precious fiancé's company destroyed our lives." Her voice rose, drawing more attention. "Jake did nothing wrong. It was a witch hunt to get back at us for how we treated you." A middle-aged woman nearby frowned. "Miss, please lower your voice or take this outside." Amber spun toward her. "Mind your own business. This is family matters." "She's not my family," I stated clearly, addressing both the concerned shopper and Amber. "And she's creating a false narrative about my fiancé's company firing her husband, who was terminated along with his entire department for compliance violations." Amber's face flushed an angry red. "Liar! You've always been jealous of me, always wanted what I had." Tee. By now, several people had stopped to watch, including a store manager approaching with concern. I maintained my composure, remembering how much power there was in dignity. "Amber, your husband lost his job because of his own actions, not because of me. I'm sorry your family is struggling, but it's not my responsibility to fix problems I didn't create." "My dad was right about you," she seethed, cold and calculating from the beginning. Poor Linda, thinking you might actually forgive her. "My relationship with my mother is none of your concern," I replied, gathering my shopping basket. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a wedding to plan." As I turned to leave, Amber grabbed my arm. "This isn't over." The store manager intervened immediately. "Ma'am, you need to let go of her right now or I'm calling security." Amber released me, but continued her tirade, growing increasingly incoherent as I walked away. Her final accusations were drowned out by the manager escorting her toward the exit, her credibility diminishing with every shrill word. The confrontation, while unpleasant, provided unexpected clarity. I had faced my past directly and remained steady. The scared girl who had been thrown out of her home was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her worth and stood her ground. In the weeks that followed, I began cautious therapist-guided conversations with my mother. We started with bi-weekly coffee meetings, strictly focused on rebuilding basic communication. She respected the boundaries I set, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. The wedding planning continued, centered around our vision of a celebration that honored both our journey together and the people who had supported us along the way. Nathan's parents threw us an engagement party where Eleanor pulled me aside to share family recipes and traditions, while Thomas quietly assured me that I had always belonged in their family from the first Sunday dinner. As for my mother's invitation to the wedding, we decided she could attend the ceremony and reception, seated with distant relatives rather than at the family table. It was a compromise that acknowledged our tentative reconciliation while respecting the reality of our still fragile relationship. The wedding day arrived bright and clear, the September sunshine warming the garden venue Nathan and I had chosen. Surrounded by his loving family and my chosen family of friends, with Zoe as my maid of honor and her parents in the front row, I felt a sense of completion that transcended the day itself. My mother attended alone as agreed elegant, in a simple blue dress, sitting quietly in the back, with a bittersweet smile as I walked down the aisle. When I caught her eye during the ceremony, she gave a small nod of acknowledgement and understanding. This was my day, my life, my family of choice, and she was there on my terms, not her own. During the reception, we shared one brief dance, both of us too emotional for many words. "I'm proud of the woman you've become," she said simply. "Thank you for allowing me to witness this day." As Nathan and I departed for our honeymoon that evening, I realized the journey had come full circle. The girl who had been discarded had created something beautiful and enduring, a life built on her own strength, a love founded on mutual respect, and a family defined by choice rather than obligation. I had lost a mother once, but found myself in the process. And that perhaps was the most unexpected gift of all. If you've ever had to create boundaries with toxic family members, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. How did you handle similar situations? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength through difficult family dynamics. Remember that chosen family can be just as meaningful as biological connections, and sometimes standing up for yourself is the greatest act of self-love. Thank you for listening, and I wish you healing and peace on your own journey.